Christmas, everybody. I'm starting the tape this year for the first time. I am enjoying school very much, and I am doing quite well in everything, except maths, in which I'm not doing very well, but I certainly enjoy it. Commemoration Day is on Saturday. Mummy and Daddy have got special tickets to have seats in the chapel. The choir wear red cassocks and white surplices and look very pretty when they are in chapel. Mummy says it sometimes has a Christmassy look, as we wear green blazers and the rest of the boys wear green blazers. The parents sit away from the rest of the boys in the pews behind them. Sometimes boys have to go on chairs in a long passage that goes down the middle of all the pews, as there is no space for them. This is my first term in the choir, and it will be the first time Mummy and Daddy have seen me on Commemoration Day. On Commemoration Day, there are lots of exhibitions of work and in the train room, where there is an enormous set-out of wonderful trains. There are also group matches between all the groups. There are senior and junior ones. My group is playing in the senior, so I will not be playing then. Last holidays I was sailing my dinghy by myself for the first time at Yarmouth in the harbour. It's great fun, especially when there is a lot of wind. On a boat in the harbour, there were lots of friends of mine who were sailing another little dinghy. It was not made for sailing, but they'd converted it, and it had a little penguin on its sail. I had races with them and nearly always won, as their dinghy was not very fast and mine is very fast. My dinghy has a red sail and no marking on it. Okay.
Say before you get this, you maybe have
Forward to hearing about your activities during the year. Before you get this, you may have a letter from me. Maybe only to the girls, but you'll still get one. Okay. One day, before I went back to school, I went to Glyn and saw Grandma and Grandpa's new bungalow and did a lot of weeding groundsel. Grandpa and I had a super bonfire which lasted for ages. We put a big stick in the ground, put lots of sticks and old concrete and cement bags round it, and then put the groundsel on when the fire got started. There was certainly a big blaze, and it was good fun to watch. I am looking forward to November the 5th and all the fireworks. My new dormitory is on the front of the school, and I can look across to Wales, and I will probably be able to see all the fireworks over there, as there are certainly a lot of them normally. My dormitory is the highest in the school, and sometimes gets very cold at night. In one corner of it there are large water tanks, which supply the school with cold water. In the night you can hear them gurgling and burgling, and they certainly make a lot of noise and stop you from going to sleep. It's nearly time for me to go back to school now, so I'm looking forward to your tape when it comes. Right. Goodbye, and a very happy Christmas to you all.
Many a tear has been falling, but it's all in the game.
Well, there you are. You've heard it all. That last bit was Anthony's favourite record of the moment, Cliff Richard singing something or other which I can't hear. But he likes it. There's nothing much more for me to say. Anthony's told you everything that he's doing at school and what he does on his holidays. He's getting to be quite a good sailor, and it probably make him quite self-reliant, and that, I think, is a good thing. There's really not much more for me to say. I've no doubt that Mary will tell you all the news. At the moment it's about 9 o'clock, and very shortly I'm going to bed because I'm leaving for London in the early morning by road. I hope you all have a good time at Christmas, and that the tape comes in good order. You get all the news, all the gossip, and a Merry Christmas to you, and I hope you'll all have a first-rate time. Cheerio from Herbert.
Hello everybody, now it's my turn to wish you all a very happy Christmas. Mummy's left the tape behind for me because with Anthony coming home just for the afternoon and Herbert going off to London in the middle of the night, somehow there wasn't time that evening for me to sit and think about what I wanted to tell you that's happened during the year, and I know I haven't written as I should do. But time flies as fast for all of us, I think. Today is Friday, the day before Anthony's commemoration that he was talking about in his recording. I've been trying to make myself a tweed suit to wear, with a cloak, which is the latest fashion here, and a straight skirt. But I couldn't possibly get it finished, so I shall wear something different and finish it, taking a little more time because I'm afraid of making mistakes. I hope sometime next week. On the morning of Commemoration Day, we go and watch the inter-group matches, Anthony calls them, but actually they're like inter-house matches. And then he'll be able to come home for lunch, because we live near enough to the school, although it'll have to be a very quick lunch. In fact, in a few minutes I must go and prepare the vegetables ready for the morning, to save time. And then in the afternoon they have a commemoration service in the school chapel, and this year the address is being given by the headmaster of Arundel, one of the public schools, where a lot of the boys from Mostyn House eventually go. And as many of the parents come from a long way away, the boys usually go out on the Sunday as well, so Anthony will be home after chapel on Sunday until 7 o'clock Sunday evening. So we hope to see quite a lot of him this weekend, and certainly I'm looking forward to it. I think I've missed him more this term than during the whole of last year, probably. He told you a little in his recording about his holiday in the Isle of Wight. I think either Mummy or I have told you that we've got a flat down there in Yarmouth, which means we're able to go down there more or less whenever we want to. And this summer I've been down a terrific amount because, as you know, Herbert bought me a boat last year. I'll try and send you some pictures of it sometime. This is the first summer I've raced it, and I must admit I started off with terrific trepidation. It was 16 years, I think, since I'd taken the helm of a boat as large, and it was big responsibility, but I've enjoyed most of it. I had 2 days when it was very rough and I was very frightened, but I got over that. But I think one of the funniest things that happened was when we first started, we raced in the handicap races, not in our class races, at the beginning of the season to get practice, and we always came in last. And Anthony said to me, "Mummy, if you come in anything other than last, I'll give you a shilling." Well, the next time I went down to the Isle of Wight for a weekend, I had 2 boys in their early 20s crewing for me. And the race started, and we'd looked up the course, and we couldn't understand it. And we started off, and to our horror we found we sailed right through the fleet, and we're in the lead, and we didn't know where we were supposed to be going. And I said to the boys, keep your eyes open. As soon as anybody turns off, tell me. And we kept on, and we kept on, and we kept on. And we decided in the end we must have the wrong course. And it turned out that we thought we were sailing course 14. And there was a little gap at the end of the board that they put the course up. And what looked like a 1 was the gap. And we were supposed to be sailing course 4. Anyway, we thoroughly enjoyed the race. We had a lot of laughs out of it. And even in the second round, we were still in second place, at the next to last buoy. But for all that, we misjudged our tides. We followed the man who was in the lead, who was one of the local experts. But by then the tide had changed and was going much faster, and everybody else went along the mainland shore, and we went straight across the tide, and they all passed us, and we came in last just as usual. Don't let me give you the impression that we always came in last. In our class races, there are 9 boats in the class, and we tied for 7th and 8th place with one other boat on the whole series. And during Cows Week, we mainly came 6th or 7th, and our best result was 5th. And on one series race other than the Cows Regatta, myself and another girl came 4th, and we were absolutely thrilled to bits with ourselves. Not only has Anthony sailed his own dinghy by himself this year, quite successfully, in the harbour, and learnt a lot from it, but he's becoming quite a useful crew in my boat, although in heavy weather he's not strong enough yet to pull the jib sheets in or handle the spinnaker or anything like that. But I've had quite a few alterations made to the sheets, newer sheets of artificial materials that don't harden like the original Terraline ropes. Had new cleats that are easier to work. And I think that next year we probably will do a lot better, and I shall have a lot more confidence. During this year I've seen quite a lot of Pat Longy. She thoroughly enjoyed making her recording last year, having a word with you. I don't know even if she's got round to writing to you yet, Betty, since last Christmas. But she lives now in a little semi-detached new house, only about 1.5 miles from Anthony's school, and she's extremely kind. If ever I want to take him out on a Wednesday afternoon, he's allowed out for 2 hours every Wednesday, and I take him out about once a month. I can take him there for tea, and he plays with her children, and she and I sit and chat, or so. And in the winter time especially, that's a terrific advantage, because to drive the 9 miles home just as it's getting dark, and then have to go back again in the dark, really isn't worth it. The roads are quite windy from here to the school. Not only that, but Pat and I occasionally have been going swimming recently together, and then we're trying to organise ourselves to spend a day at one or other of the others' houses, normally dressmaking, having lunch together and parting company round about 3:30 in the afternoon. We both enjoy the swimming, and going during the winter the baths aren't very crowded. Pat's parents now live in Swanage, and they went down there for their holiday this year. And they came over to Yarmouth to the flat for a day and brought the 3 children. It was during the time that Anthony had chicken pox, so that we weren't as free to do what we might have done during the day, because I couldn't leave the flat for long at a time and leave him by himself. But Heather and Peter, Peter's the boy who's crewed for me, Peter Allen this is, mainly during the year, and Heather is the elder daughter of one of Herbert's best friends who died 2 years ago, who I took to Yarmouth last summer 1962, and she got engaged to Peter in November 1962, and they hoped to get married round about November 1964. They took Dennis, Pat's husband, sailing because the love of his life is sailing, and they're hoping to come down with me next year, maybe for the odd weekend, to come and crew for me. On one of my trips back from a weekend in the Isle of Wight this year, I went to see Joan Surfleet, who Mummy probably told you got married about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, it must be, to a widower in Marlow, and it's the first time I've seen her since before I was, since I was married, but when Anthony was quite small. And she now has 3 delightful little children under 3, or 3 and under, 2 girls and a boy. And I had a very pleasant 4 hours with her and lunched at her house, and then drove on home afterwards, breaking my journey up from the island. So much of this tape is going to be boring for anybody else other than Betty. I know that. It's very difficult to know quite what to say that the children will be interested in as well. I think they probably enjoy Anthony's part of the tape more than anything. Anthony now comes up to my shoulder. He weighs, oh dear, 5 stone 3. Now, I don't know how many pounds that is, but no doubt Mummy can work that out for the children. He loves playing football or soccer. They don't play rugby football at this school until they're in the senior school. And last term he won, he had a very good report, and he won a prize for good work through the year, and also a very beautiful silver cup for spelling, much to our delight, because there's one thing that irritates me, it's children who can't spell. He reads voraciously and loves the Arthur Ransom stories. And Betty will remember how much I enjoyed them as a child, as a teenager, and I must admit I read them mostly once a year now. As I recalled this, I'm half listening for Daddy's car coming up the drive. He's going to collect the tape recorder tonight. He's been to a meeting or a dinner in Liverpool, and take it back to Mummy, so that she and himself and maybe some of your other friends from Glen can add their messages, ready for it to catch the post and be there in time for Christmas. Mummy and I had a very successful afternoon, day shopping in Liverpool this week, starting to look for your Christmas presents, and we've decided we will probably pack our parcel together because postage from here is so expensive that it may work out more economical to pack one parcel of the heavier things and then send the small things letterpost. Otherwise we find the postage costs more than the gift if we're not very careful. The 2 recordings you've heard on our part of the tape, Anthony's favourite and the carol Little Donkey, were played on a new stereophonic radiogram that Herbert bought just before last Christmas, or only a few days before Christmas. And we tease him and tell him it was Herbert's Christmas present to Herbert. We've got quite a few records now, not an awful lot, most of them classical music or light classical music, but Anthony's got a fair selection of pop music of one sort and another. Tornadoes and quite a few Cliff Richard records, and the Shadows, and also things like Sparky's Magic Piano, which no doubt I'm sure it's an American record, your children know as well. The last time Betty sent some magazines home, I remember that half the stories in them were stories I'd read in English magazines, and I was pretty disgusted about it, to think I got something from halfway across the world and I was only reading the same thing all over again. And I think it's happening more and more. I often wonder when we're watching television programs. We have a lot of filmed programs from America. Do you watch, let me think, Wagon Train, Laramie, Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound? Oh, I can't think of any more at the moment. Isn't it silly? I know, there's another one that we love, the Hillbillies, the Beverly Hillbillies. Do you have that one? And Our Man Higgins, which I think Betty probably would enjoy. And The Lucy Show is another one which we get a lot of laughs out of. It seems funny to think that even though you're so far away, you probably can see exactly the same programs as we do within a very short time of our seeing them. We asked Herbert's mother the other day if she would like to put a message on this tape, but she finds speaking into a microphone more frightening than the telephone, and she said she'd rather write her message, so no doubt you'll hear from her on a card. I must admit I was a little surprised to have a letter from Mummy the other day, enclosing your last letter, saying that number 7's on the way, but no doubt you'll get as much pleasure from number 7 as you have out of the other 6. I envy you in many, many ways. It seems such a long time since I made a pact to have 6 boys. It was to help to help the boyfriend situation for the next generation of girls. The friend I made it with, so far as I know, has 1 boy and 1 girl, so she hasn't done much better than me anyway. Susan, who you never met, Betty, but was my bridesmaid and went to live in Brazil, got married out there, then came home and lived in England for about 5 years, now lives in Gibraltar. And she's just had her 4th baby. She now has 3 boys and a girl. But she's not as well situated as you, living accommodation on the island or the Rock of Gibraltar is very, very limited, and she only has 2 bedrooms, and the second room is really only a box room. And she says that it's not only sleeping accommodation, it's storage space for their clothes, so very difficult. But she keeps fairly cheerful. She was home this summer for around about 5 weeks, and had 2 days' visit with me with the youngest child, who was one of my godchildren. Now I think it's probably time I got round to the real point of this recording, to wish you all a very happy Christmas and all the best for 1964. We look forward to hearing news of Reynard number 7. I hope all goes well. Maybe it will be another little girl. It seems shattering to think Mummy and Daddy are hoping to come to see you next year. Mummy's making terrific plans already and thinking about what she's going to bring to wear and how she's going to pack it and how much weight she's allowed to carry. And oh, there seems such a lot of preparation. I must admit, when the time comes, I'm going to be pretty envious of them. I'm quite sure you'd love their new bungalow. I only wish they could move into it, because it really is delightful. It's just the right size for them. As you all know, it's in a beautiful spot, and I think once they're able to get settled in it, they'll be very happy. Daddy's got a big enough garage to have his workshop at the back, and Mummy these days is very busy with her work for the Women's Voluntary Service and the Darby and Joan Club. My social service these days is comprised solely of Meals on Wheels for the WBS. I do it once in 3 weeks, which I find comes round quite often enough for the amount of work there is to do in this house and the other things I like to do as well. I've been going to night school this winter for soft furnishings, and at the moment I'm making Mummy a standard lampshade. But I've got a whole pile of jobs that have been waiting to be finished for years, stacked away in the sewing cupboard. On the Meals on Wheels service, I don't know if they do anything like it in America, but we take hot meals to old people who can't otherwise perhaps have a cooked meal. And those people on the rota get a meal twice a week, delivered hot, and they just have to have their plates ready, and they pay a shilling for a 2-course meal. Now, as usual, I've wandered away from the point. I was in the process of wishing you all a very happy Christmas. I'm sure the children will enjoy it. And I'm sure you, Betty and Rick, get a terrific amount of pleasure out of watching your children opening their presents Christmas morning. Last year, I remember you told us that the girls had cooked your breakfast I'm not sure it was Christmas morning or during the Christmas holidays. Anthony also loves to get up, especially when we're in the Isle of Wight, just the two of us, when Herbert's back at work. And he'll cook me something, bring it in on a tray, and give me breakfast in bed as a special holiday treat. Now to all of you, and Grandma Reynard, if she's able to be with you at Christmas Day as well, or whenever she hears this tape, because I've no doubt that she'll hope to hear it, or parts of it that you think she may find interesting. A very, very happy Christmas and a happy New Year.
Well now, this is Daddy, or Grandpa, as Betty used to say, going to wish you all to record his Christmas message. It seems just impossible to me to realise that 12 months have gone by since I was doing this on the last tape in Cynthia. I have a feeling that tape was not too successful. We got a 2-track tape because we thought it lined up with yours, and you in the meantime, I believe, got a 4-track tape. And I don't know whether you were able to get any sense out of one we sent you, because we certainly were not able to get any sense out of the one you sent us. And the one we sent you, though, is rather pity, because I recorded some songs that I thought the boys would have been amused by anyway. I can't help thinking that you heard it. Some comment would have been made about the songs, the choice, the origin, whether I learn them, and the rest of it. However, this time I understand from Mummy that you are arranging to be able to play this 2-track tape. Hope so, otherwise we are transporting a lot of tape to each other for little purpose. I think during the year, Mummy has kept you posted with most of our doings by her letters. You'll know, for instance, that John has now finished at the university, and when he finished in July, he took a job as a labourer in a factory with the object of earning some money. And he continued working there to within a week of him taking up a teaching job in Berlin. So he only really had a week's holiday this year, which, as you know, the final year was a very heavy one. And I was glad that he was able to get the week's holiday in. Mummy and I had taken the boat in August down to Plymouth, where there was a rally of the boats of the type that we have, the 50-odd boats in total, and we had a very pleasant time down there. We actually slept ashore and stayed with the Lloyds, who you'll remember better, at their little cottage in Mothercombe, which is just 2 meadows off a very nice little cove on the seashore. One of those sort of places you read about but wonder if they ever really do exist. Anyway, they're there, and we had a very happy time with them. We brought the boat. John came down on the last Friday night before we left, as there was a ball there that we were giving to the city authorities, who'd given us a wonderful civic reception around the week, and the Royal Corinthian Yacht Club and the Royal Western Yacht Club, who had also acted as our hosts. John came down to that, and we went to a sail on the Saturday, and the boat was lifted out of the water on Sunday morning. Excuse me, I sneezed then for some reason or other. We took the boat, took John back to Birmingham, and then brought the boat on back home and put it in the garden, on its stillage as we call it. Then, when John was coming home for his week's holiday, we took it over to Menai Straits in Anglesey and launched it there, and he had the week on it there with an undergraduate girl from Birmingham University, who was the daughter of one of the university professors who had been with him up home before. The weather was in the summer that has been most noticeable for its absence. They had a very fine week indeed, and I was very glad of it because John really did need the holiday. He is, I believe, teaching at 3 schools and taking English and English literature. 2 mixed classes of various ages, depending on some of my extension courses of people hoping to qualify for some professional examination or something of that description. Others are to teenage children as part of their ordinary run of education. We saw him about a fortnight ago. He's got a bed sitter in Edgbaston, which is part of Birmingham, and as he's always been rather a keen amateur cook, I think he's doing very well. Anyway, he seemed very happy indeed. Now, with regard to myself, it seems impossible to appreciate that I've only 7 more months at work before I retire. I never thought that I would want to retire. I couldn't imagine myself retiring. But now I am getting quite conditioned to the retirement. I realize that there are so many things I shall never do, so many places that I shall never see, when I was in the 30s, 40s, and so on. I thought we would do some time. Now I realize that there just will not be time to do all these many things, which makes also one realize that the longer one leaves the retirement, the less chance there will be of doing some of the things that one would like to do. And but they're still even possible. And in that, of course, primarily is our visit to USA. So that when June the 12th comes next year, I will not have regrets about severing connections. Times are changing. I mentally still feel young, but not in tune necessarily with the present generation in so many things. And that's a hobby horse that people of my age can very easily mount, I believe, and always have been right through the ages. So that's probably a mark of venerability rather than, say, wisdom. That raising the question of our trip over to you, I want us to come by ship both ways, much prefer it in every respect. And the other thing is that when we get out there, as to what time we should arrive and where we should spend it. These Mummy has told you in the letter we had a recent visit from Hilda Young, who was a school friend of Mummy's, and I knew her at that period too. Who married a Canadian after World War One, and is now retired in Vancouver. We should like to go all to see them. We should like, if possible, to call on Claire Thatcher in Toronto. She's still out then. So that would seem to me to make 2 or 3 ways of considering how our trip might be organized. For instance, we come out to see you, stay with you, then cross the States, call Vancouver, come back to Toronto, then back to New York on the ship. Then there could be another one that we come and stay with you to start with, and we then go to Vancouver and Toronto, and then come down and stay with you for a bit. Or we go to Vancouver and back again, and then stay with you for a bit, then come to Toronto, and then come back and stay with you for a bit. All those are sort of alternatives. To some extent, I think the climate will probably have to decide. As you may remember, I'm not very good at, well, I'm all right, but my skin is not very good at resisting very hot weather. So if we can dodge that, it's probably a thing we ought to do. On the other hand, I realize that the children's holiday will be somewhere in the July and August period, and that the New York World Fair will be on, which is obviously a thing we should do. So those sort of factors will have to also be taken into consideration. Now, and it could be that I will be making some calls on some of the public utilities in the USA with object of exchanging views on their methods of administration compared with our own, for the sake of for the benefit of the present board, electricity board, and in which case that may involve other travelling. Now, there's been a suggestion that this is a thing in which I might interest myself, and I'm naturally very anxious to do it. To start with, it gives one a much better spending allowance, because one would then be sponsored for a visit to the States on a business footing, as distinct from a visit for pleasure. So one would be a little freer that way. This program has not yet been got out. When I came over to the States before in '36 on a similar jaunt, it was then a thing that I organized myself, and that I had a carefully laid out program, knowing the people with whom I was going to meet, what undertaking, what town, at what time. And prior to the visit, I supplied them with a questionnaire of the things I wished to study, so that they were available with people and the answers, so it was the least possible time wasted. Something of the same sort would be desirable this time if this sort of business side of the trip materializes. It's too early to say whether it will or not yet. But I'm mentioning it because, of course, that could also involve me in some travelling. Now, with regard to travelling, we thought that the car we have over here, which will be 3 years old next year, we would sell or get sold after we left to go to the States, and we would buy another one when we came back again. But for travel in the States, I've been thinking that we might be able to hire or to buy for resale at the end of the trip what we call over here a dormobile, which is really, in effect, a motor caravan. There's a cab seat in the front with seats for three in the front, and then the remainder of the vehicle is designed with two bunk beds, kitchen, little galley sort of thing, lockers, and usually has a roof which can be raised when you're stationary to give you full headroom in, you might say, the caravan portion of the vehicle. Now, I don't know whether those are available over your side, but if they are, perhaps you can send me a cutting from one of your newspapers, motor papers, that may illustrate what the vehicle is like. Also, I'd like your advice on the question as to what you think of the proposition. We spoke to the two Canadians about it, and they seem to think it was all right. What it would mean, what we found over this side, or people over this side have found, is this, that you can make your own breakfast very easily, and you can make, say, a light supper before you go to bed, and you can have the rest of your meals out if you wish to. It makes you completely independent as to where you stop, where you stay, and of course it reduces the hotel expense considerably. At the same time, it does enable you to see the country in a way that would be impossible almost by any other means of mechanical travel, distinct from cycling or walking, which I suppose is really the best way. Perhaps you would, between now and January, say, Rick could make some investigations to see what the possibilities are and what sort of recommend. Obviously, the conditions would be quite different from this side, and it's very easy to make a decision on the basis of knowledge from this side, which would be quite a silly thing to do, to apply it on the other side. However, perhaps you can have a look at that one. Well, when we were recording last year, I had hoped that by now we should have sold the house and have been living in the bungalow. But it has not turned out like that at all. So I've still got some of the bushes in the garden to cut again, as I had hoped when I cut them last year. This will be the last time I can be responsible for trimming them. Also, we've not made any move really to get rid of much of the stuff that we've been collecting over the years, which obviously we must dispense with, because there will not be physical room in which to put the stuff, even if we want to or keep it. In that connection, Betty, I just wondered whether there is, I think you've been asked this before, I can't remember whether you expressed a wish on it, if there is anything that you remember that you would like us to bring over to you, or even if you can't remember a particular thing, remember what sort of thing you would like if it was available. Hoping that we do get rid of the house before we are too near retirement, because I shan't want to really plan to come over to the States if we've still got the sale of this house on our hands and the other one empty next door to us. So those are the sort of awkward things at the moment. People tell me that, oh, somebody will come along, it'll be just the thing they want, and it'll go just like that. I only hope they're right. I hope they're not too long. And I had hoped that this winter we shouldn't have to be looking after 2 houses again. Particularly if it's going to be as severe, anywhere near as severe as last winter was. Last winter, incidentally, the record, in case you haven't heard it, was the most severe winter since 1740. So I presume that this coming winter can't possibly be as severe as the last one. Otherwise, it's going to make records look a bit foolish if you can get a gap of from 1740 and then no gap at all. However, those are the sort of things that are making decisions very difficult with us locally. If we knew we were selling the house, as many of the things we've got in here, we would move into the bungalow. But we don't want to do that until it's sold, because we think it's easier to sell a house that is already with furniture in it. And moreover, once you start to put furniture inside an empty house, you then start to have to pay rates for it. And obviously, we don't want to be paying rates for 2 lots of properties and only occupying one of them. With regard to my occupying myself after retirement, I said that earlier on that I conditioned myself to thinking that it was a good time. It was time to go. And the big thing, I think, in retirement from my observations and what people say about it is that to keep yourself mentally as well as physically active. And I don't think there will be any difficulty in that at all. Mummy has become involved in the WDS, as Mary's already told you, and Mummy has told you. Which is one of those very good, reliable voluntary bodies which do occasionally seem to tick in this country. And she's the sort of local organizer down the valley, and from there is rather good at that sort of thing. Involved with that is the looking after older people, and as I think she's probably already told you, we have the group kept in Cheshire Homes now opened in where the old Queen Hotel has been. I've been on the committee there now for 12 months. I haven't been able to attend until this last September, and there's obviously plenty of work there for anyone to do that's got the time to do it, as one would have the time to do it if one has retired, in helping this place not only to run from an organisation point of view, but also to help with the people themselves, and the equipment, and the rest of it. So, with those sort of activities available around us, I don't think Mummy and I will find that retirement is going to pall at all. Mary's already told you that the garage is big enough to have the back portion of it as a workshop, and what I say is in regard to the doghouse, so when I'm in the doghouse, I can go into the workshop there and get from under Mummy's feet, because after 40-odd years of being free of me during the day, to have me there 24 hours a day is asking a lot of any woman, I think. So other locations are very necessary, I think, on those sectors. I think the bungalow, the other activities will automatically provide for it. It's a pity that you can't come and help with the move. Because I feel that as and when we have moved, as I said, we've obviously got to get rid of an awful lot of stuff. If at the end of 12 months we can look around in the bungalow and see what we've got and say, well, I'm glad we kept all this stuff and threw all the other stuff away. And don't say, well, I wonder why on earth we kept this and threw something else away. We've achieved a major success. I don't suppose we can expect to be 100% that way. That wouldn't be reasonable to expect it. But we'll manage. I feel that all this that I've said is going to be very little interest to the children. It's difficult. Also, they all cover such a wide range, don't they? Anyway. But to Ricky and Reggie, Livy, John, David Booth, I send my very best wishes for a happy Christmas and a happy New Year, and we shall hope to see you during the New Year. To our Aunt Innes and Uncle Harrington, who I expect you will see, at least if you don't, perhaps next time you do see them, you will pass on our good wishes to them, and say we also hope to see them during our visit next year. And to Grandma Raynon, my very best wishes also. Perhaps before this tape leaves, I can be able to add something more. At the moment, Mummy is now coming with the tea, which has been delayed, while I try to record this Christmas message. So for the time being, goodbye.
Hello, Betty and Rick. Well, having just listened to what Daddy had to say, what Mary had to say before him, seems to me there's very little left to tell you about. Daddy seems to have many ideas about our visit, some of them to my mind not quite practicable. But I suppose it'll work out in time and we shall see what will happen. And I suggested the other day that we came about the beginning of August, perhaps the second week in August, and met us in New York. Perhaps we had a couple of weeks together so that we could visit the fair and perhaps go to New England with you. I didn't seem to think that that was a very good idea. It would be too hot for them. I pointed out that the children would be going back to school in the beginning of September, and we must be home at least some days before school started. We also, to my mind, the next step would be to go over on our trip across Canada, so that we were sure to go whilst the weather was good, and be back again before the snow started. Now this year I noticed that they had snow in October, which only leaves us September to do the Canadian trip. And as it's a 6,000-mile journey and only one driver, seems to me that a month would be the minimum that we could allow to do it, and stay for a couple of days in the places where we wanted to stay, and then get back to you. Whether we should be able to do all the things that we would like to do, of course, is just in the lap of the gods. We shall really have to wait and see how things turn out. I would very, very much like to go to Eureka, possibly on the other coast, and see Jeannie, if it were possible. But of course, one doesn't know. Unless we can have our own transport, I think it would be pretty expensive to do it. And at the same time, on some of the advertisements that I see in our newspapers, even our own transport seems to be rather expensive. Travel by train or by bus seems to be cheaper. Then, of course, on top of that, one has hotel expenses. So it's all rather disturbing at the moment. And of course, as Daddy says, we really don't know just when they can come. So much depends on selling the house. Well, I have just turned the tape back and listened to what I had said already, just in case it wasn't recording properly. I hope we haven't too many background noises. Today is, I forget the date, a Thursday in November. It has poured with rain all day long. In fact, we've had nearly a week of very, very wet weather. The rivers are extremely high, and most of the leaves are on the ground at last. We have had a month or 6 weeks of really lovely weather until the last 10 days or so. And the weather forecasts are now beginning to talk about snow on high ground. I believe a little snow has fallen in Scotland, and it's been forecast that there would be snow on the mountains in Wales, but so far we haven't seen any, although there was some sleet in the rain today. The Christmas round of parties has begun, and tomorrow morning Daddy and I will be going to Liverpool, and tomorrow evening we shall be going to the headquarters dance in Liverpool, staying the night in Mary's house and coming home on Saturday morning to be here when John and his friend Gillian come to go to the Silhouette Association dance with us in Manchester on Saturday night. We shall be staying the night over there because Daddy has a committee meeting on Sunday morning whilst everybody is together. And then we shall come home after lunch, and John will catch the train at about 6 o'clock, I suppose, to go back to Birmingham and work once more. I don't think I had better say any more about him, because he'll want to tell you about his new commitments and himself, and I'm hoping that there will be an hour for him to talk to you on Saturday afternoon. This week Mary and I posted the parcel to you. It's a joint effort this time, just one parcel with everybody's presents from us in it. Before you receive this, of course, Betty will have had the air letter telling her what is in the parcel and what to do about it. We feel quite pleased with ourselves because we're up to time this year. Now, to come back to the tape, I had meant to try and find something to record that would amuse the children, but I'm afraid things have been so busy since I had the tape back from Mary last week that I haven't had time to do it at all, and I'm afraid it's not going to be very interesting to the younger ones. Incidentally, when Daddy was listing the family, mentioning each by name, I noticed he left Mary out. I'm sure that was quite unintentional, and I hope Mary will forgive him and think, well, he thinks he said Happy Christmas, Mary. I would like to know how tall everybody is, particularly the two girls, so perhaps sometime they might write and say. Of course, I owe them both a letter now. They both wrote me very nice letters which arrived last Monday, and I also had one from Anthony on the same day. That was really a lovely surprise to have letters from 3 of them all on the same day. Go back to the bungalow. Today, this week, we've had the workmen in again, and the front of the bungalow is beginning to be tidied up. I mean the ground on which such things as a cement mixer and piles of rubble and old rubbish of all kinds. Quite a great deal of it has been cleared away, and they're now levelling the parking place in the front of it. So when they've moved one heap of stone, which was piled up in front of the terrace, I'll be able to take a really nice picture of it. So far, I haven't done so because it looked so very, very untidy. I'm delighted with the inside. I only hope that when we get the furniture in, it will look as nice as I imagine it will, and that we shall have sufficient room. Of course, the bedrooms are not as big as our present ones, so we're bound to feel more cramped, and as we shall not have so many cupboards, we shall be obliged to have perhaps two, where at the moment we only have one wardrobe in each room, with perhaps an extra bookcase or something or other like that. Of course, a great many things won't be able to go there. Some of them won't look right. For instance, the curios which Dad amassed and which decorate the hall in this house. For one thing, we haven't the wall space in the bungalow, and for the other thing, as it's a more modern house, they wouldn't look right there. But John has said he would like me to keep them in case someday he may have a house big enough to put them in. He's very interested and very pleased with Victoriana. I have a collection of things put by for you. There's a mirror which was left to you by Aunt Ada, and part of Grandma's tea set. Various other little things of Auntie Nellie's, and some linen, various things of that kind, which will not be too difficult to pack and bring, which I have set aside for you, and I hope that you'll find some use for. I also thought of bringing for you the picture, When Did You Last See Your Father? I thought the children would enjoy that, and you mentioned it the other day. I'm afraid my thoughts are wandering, and I'm saying just random things that come into my mind. Switch back to the house, and this past year, a great deal of time has been spent in trying to keep the garden looking respectable. Keeping the borders free from weeds and leaves, and the grass cut and such like, and I must say that we have missed John's visits home. He used to come much more often than he does now, and always before he's helped with the hedge cutting. I'm afraid some of it has not been done this year, as he hasn't been home. I have, or I had at the beginning of the year, two old age pensioners who helped in the garden. I don't know whether you remember Mr. Lloyd, but he has been very ill and in hospital and doesn't come anymore, so now we're left with only one man. He's quite good, a very good worker. Of course, the old age pensioners are restricted in the amount of time, the amount of money that they can earn. And so that, of course, cuts down the amount of hours that you can employ them. And when you think that it has taken 3 whole days' work to sweep up leaves alone on the lawn and the drives, say nothing of the weeding and digging of potatoes and such like. We grow potatoes because they're fairly easy to do and fairly easily disposed of. One must grow something. We had a very good crop this year in spite of a very late start. So did quite well with peas and beans, but as usual they come to fruition just when you're about to go off on your summer holiday. Why we always have to go away in August I don't know, seeing that we have no school children, but it always seems that for the sailing that we want to take part in, that happens in August, and so that's when we take our holiday. Mrs. Davis still comes 4 times a week, and any time when we're away from home she comes in to look after Tinker. Now, there's a problem for us. What we're going to do with Tinker when we come to America. Because I realise, although I don't think Daddy does, that he will never be the same again when we come back. No matter what we do with him, whether we leave him here for Mrs. Davis to look after, which I think would be quite unkind, because he'd have to spend so much time alone, or whether we leave him with someone else, his habits are going to completely change and he won't fit into my pattern of life, I'm afraid, when I come back, particularly if it means that he's only been in the bungalow for a very short time and then away somewhere else. I should be sorry about this because he's a dear little dog, and wherever he goes he's going to, in 6 months, transfer his allegiance to somebody else. It isn't going to be easy to come back and find that he's not the same as he was. Also, you see, if I let Mrs. Davis have him in the village, even if she would like to, I have never asked her, he would then have a round of visits that he enjoyed paying. He'd be meeting other dogs, which is a thing that's never happened here. He was trained as a puppy not to go past the pillar box or the gate in the wall, and he's been perfectly happy just pottering about by himself in the lane. I think it's too long to ask anybody to have him and then have him back. I think he'll have to be given a new home somewhere else. But I've never talked to Daddy about this, and I don't know what his thoughts are about it. Mrs. May would have him, I dare say. She hasn't Jimmy any longer, but what he would be like when I came back after Mrs. May had had him for 6 months, I don't know, because she would spoil him entirely. Also, the cousins in Birmingham might like to have him, but and Ian's wife, Ian Dallason's wife, offered to have him the other day. But as they live on a main road with no gates or fences to their house, actually they live in a cul-de-sac off a main road, I don't think he'd survive many weeks. I feel quite certain that he'd either cause an accident or be involved and probably destroyed in an accident before he'd been there very long, because he's not used to main road fast traffic. Oh, now to go back to our visit to you. My thoughts were that we should come down and see you, perhaps come back with you till the beginning of September, and then go off to Canada, and come back to you in October, and stay until after Christmas. And from there we could go and visit Aunt Ima's and Charlene, who now lives in Falls Church, and Mr. Hunt's daughter. I can't think of her name at the moment. I believe she's moved a little further away from Washington than she was. As a matter of fact, I can't find the name of her home on the map, not even on the SO map, which is my best reference that I have for your part of the world. When Hilda and Hardy were here, when we were talking about crossing Canada, I was very surprised to hear, you know, one looks at a map and sees vast open spaces with no names on it. You imagine that there would be long gaps between towns. And we were very surprised to hear that the National Highway is peppered with gas stations, and there are towns very frequently. Mind you, I realise that many of them are very small townships, but Canada is not the vast open space on the National Highway that one is apt to think it is. And of course the same applies in the United States. We shouldn't ever be very far from some sort of habitation. There's a great deal of advertisement in our national press these days for trips to America, and it seems that one is advised to do it as we did when I came before, to book all your travel on this side before you go, thereby leaving more money for your other expenses. And it gives samples of how far you can go by air for so much, or how far you can go by train for so much, or for how many days you can travel by bus for so much. Of course, not having any experience, these things are rather nebulous, particularly when you're not quite sure what you want to do. John has some friends or friends that he's met in America. Well, most of them have been here to see us. There are some in Montreal, and some in other parts of North America. I feel sure that he would like us to look them up. Also, Pat Dodson, I believe, is in Vancouver now. She is Daddy's cousin Harry Dodson's youngest daughter. I expect you remember her. Although, no, now I come to think of it, the last time she was here was when Claire and her husband and her children were over here. It seems unbelievable that Claire is a widow again, and also that Meredith is married and has a child over a year old, as she was only quite a young schoolgirl in those days. I think about Reggie's age. Well, it's getting near to 6 o'clock, and I shall have the clock chiming onto the record in a moment. And I'm also expecting Daddy to come in a few minutes, so I think I'll stop talking now for a little while, and maybe I'll have thought of something fresh to say to you by the time I come back again. So for now, bye-bye.
Hello, Betty. This is John here, sending my greetings to you and to the rest of the family for Christmas 1963. I'm home for the weekend to go with Mummy and Daddy to the Silhouette Association annual dinner and dance. So, I've got to pack in everything I can think of to say in this half hour or so that we've got before we've got to go out again. At the moment, I'm teaching in Birmingham in a technical college, or rather in 3 technical colleges. Officially, I'm on the part-time staff, teaching English O-level, 4 lessons a week in one college, and 8 lessons in the same college for one called Social Studies or sometimes general studies. This really is a sort of current affairs lesson with an attempt to give the students an awareness of the world around them, such things as banking, the use of money, politics, rival political systems, how to buy a house, elementary criticism of films and television shows, and music. Try and persuade them to read a bit, give them some understanding of how newspapers work and so on. Most of the work in this sort of class is on the discussion sort of line. I talk to them for about 20 minutes and then we discuss what I've had to say, give them as much information as possible and then try to find out their opinions. Topics like communism, fascism, capital punishment, newspapers, banks, and so on are the sort of stock in trade for this sort of lesson. Apart from the lessons I have at this one college, 12 altogether, I have one lesson at another college in Birmingham on a Monday morning at 9 o'clock, and 5 other lessons at a third college. Between these 18 lessons, I find my time fairly well filled up. The full-time teacher in a technical college in England teaches between 20 and 22 hours a week. I've got 18, so I'm not far below them in time, in the length of time I'm actually teaching. Perhaps it seems odd to be teaching part-time almost as much as a full-time teacher would be, but it does have certain advantages. It means that I'm freer to move around and not so tied to my employer as I might be as a permanent appointment. Also, it means that if I take an extra class, I get paid for that by the hour as I get paid by the hour for my normal teaching hours. It does mean that I don't get paid in the vacations, but as I only have 4 weeks holiday in the year, 2 at Christmas and 2 at Easter before my term of service on this system finishes, it means that I also get paid at a fairly high rate. This means that in fact I'm managing to save fairly fast and should be able to think about going to America under my own steam sometime in the next year or the year after that. If I did come to the States, I should probably want to get a job while I was there so that I could keep myself as far as possible without breaking down my capital too much. Perhaps either you or Rick know what sort of opportunities there are for English teachers in high schools or technical schools in America. I would, in a way, I suppose, still hanker after teaching in university, but I feel that this would be rather a fraud, in that I'm not really qualified up to that sort of standard. On the other hand, I feel that I can teach quite adequately on up to sort of English sixth form level, either English language or literature, and related subjects like history and geography, and this sort of social studies business that I'm doing at the moment. Anyway, enough of that. As you know, I've now finished university. I suppose this is putting the horse somewhere a long way in front of the cart. And have got my degree at last. This seems rather a break now. I felt in my last few weeks at university that quite nostalgic about leaving, and at the same time quite relieved to feel that I was going away from the place. Perhaps really I've stayed too near Birmingham, or too near the university at least. I find when I go into the Union now that my status has changed somewhat. I'm now somewhat of a stranger. I still have a lot of friends there and I can still meet them very happily. But it's not the same sort of thing as belonging to the club because you have activities involved within it. I think probably the biggest wrench about leaving university is not so much the loss of my friends, they have dispersed anyway, but the fact that I no longer have the opportunity for taking part in the sort of university external activities like the play acting. At the end of last term, we did a play, Midsummer Night's Dream, which perhaps you may remember out of the dim past from one of Mummy's letters we did when I was at school. The first time I did it, I was Hermia. This time, I got probably the biggest part I shall ever have in my life, as far as these sort of things go. That is Demetrius. This was great fun. I enjoyed it more than any play I've done so far. And sort of my last fling at acting as a student came at the beginning of this term when we rehashed the production for the freshmen and put it on for a one-night stand on a Sunday evening instead of the usual Sunday film. This, I'm afraid, really emphasized how much we'd left the university. There were 3 or 4 of us who no longer belonged, but had just come back for this one performance. And the things somehow seemed a little bit irrelevant to the normal situation of acting for something we belonged to. We seemed like guests and outsiders. It wasn't very conscious, but I suppose this is inevitable. Most of my friends have now dispersed. Well, this isn't strictly true. Of my 3 principal friends at university, one of them is a lecturer at an art college in Chesterfield, about 50 miles away. Another one is still at the university on a postgraduate course, and the third one is teaching in a primary school while he waits to go to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. Whether he'll get in or not is another matter. I personally suspect that he's being rather hopeful. He was very good at theatrical sort of things, but his line was really production, not acting. He's a very bad actor indeed, and it seems these days that the way into the theatre is through acting and moving on to higher things perhaps later. Anyway, this is, I suppose, not really very interesting to you as you don't know any of these people. Mummy said something earlier on on this tape about my friends in America. Well, I hope she will visit some of them, but it's going to be rather difficult for most. Fred and Betty Weinstein, 2 Canadians who were over here for 3 years while we were at university, live in Montreal, and I hope that Mummy and Daddy managed to see them while they're there. On the other hand, my other American friends, Ellen Mizell and Karen Hans, are not in contact with any of us any longer. Karen got married and stopped writing, and then Ellen, who was always rather a wild sort of girl, wound up on the New Yorker, writing for them somehow or other, or editing for them, sub-editing I mean, and then disappeared from sight somewhere, so nobody really knows very much about them. This is rather a pity really, but I suppose it was inevitable in some ways, because the sort of things that we used to be able to talk about had sort of become lost through the distance. Anyway, when I come to America, I shall try to find some of these people and see how much they've changed. In a way, I'm a bit afraid of this, because I think it would be a pity to spoil sort of happy memories of friends I enjoyed knowing by finding out that we've really drifted so far apart. But I suspect this is probably true. The sort of friendships I made at university, with 2 or 3 exceptions, were really all rather superficial, based on the fact that we were doing the same sort of work at the same time. Most of us weren't very alike. I don't really think we really liked each other all that much, basically down underneath it all. Well, that's enough of that sort of nostalgic stuff. This summer I spent a week's holiday with a friend of mine from university, Gillian Tretharan, who's sort of expatriate Australian at the university now, sailing at Menard Bridge in the Silhouette. We were very lucky. In a pretty wet summer, we picked a week where it rained one afternoon, and the rest of the time the weather was really quite gorgeous. I don't know if Mummy sent you any of the photographs, but if not, I've got the negatives at the moment, and I'll get some made up to send you. We didn't sail every day by any means, but we did. On the days we didn't sail, we went to Carnarvon Castle and Beaumaris Castle and round Anglesey a little, and saw quite a lot of places that I'd never seen in the 14 years I've been in North Wales, really. The rest of my summer vacation, or about 7 or 8 weeks of it, was spent working in a cardboard box factory near the university. This place belonged to the Foyle family, cousins of the bookshop people. It was run by a Miss Beryl Foyle and her elder brother Jack, and who had a younger brother, Dennis, whom they'd moved off the board because they thought he was a bit wild and given him some sort of technical job in the factory. It was really quite interesting as an experience. I spent most of my day lifting piles of unprinted cardboard onto a printing machine, or alternatively taking piles of printed cardboard in both hands and shaking them about to dry the ink and putting them onto another pile so that they could go into another shop to be cut up into cartons before they were folded. The factory was run on very patriarchal sort of lines. The tannoy system always referred to Miss Beryl or Mr. Jack or Mr. Dennis and so on. The managers that they had in the place seemed nothing more than jumped-up foremen, and most of the workers ranged from the extremely sycophantic I love foils because they love me sort of attitude to the completely cynical what have we got to do with them sort of attitude. I suppose this is fairly typical of industry, but at the same time I gathered from talking to some of the men that had worked in other factories before that this place had a quite unique sort of industrial atmosphere. Please turn over. To continue, the balance between the sort of notices that were up was quite amazing. On the one hand, you have a series of prohibitions, all of which ended up with offenders will be punished by instant dismissal, contrasted with an equally large number of notices advertising social services available in the factory, prizes for finding new and original shaped cartons that the company could put in to make, and prizes for improvements in working techniques. The factory published a daily bulletin which was filled with homely wisdom about efficiency and productivity and good working relationships, which was fair enough, I suppose, except that they didn't seem to be able to handle their union leaders in such a way that they carried very much respect. This was not a case, at least it didn't seem to me to be a case, of the unions being obstreperous and unreasonable, but rather that the Foyle family regarded themselves as being so right about everything that the slightest criticism of the workings of the factory from the union leaders, who were often in fact endeavouring to be helpful, or the slightest opposition to their personal will was met with the attitude that this was rebellion, and not merely rebellion, but sort of impertinent rebellion. Altogether, as an outsider, I found it very entertaining, though perhaps it's a good thing I didn't stay there much longer. Fortunately, I spent most of that time working with a friend of mine and sharing a flat with him over in Moseley, which is one of the borderline suburbs in Birmingham. It's halfway between the slums and the rather flashy middle-class suburbs. We were just about on the border. One side of the road, the houses were falling down, and the other side, it had a sort of genteel air with nicely cultivated gardens and gracious curtains behind the windows. Now I have moved to another furnished room. I suppose it's not really worth dignifying it and calling it a flat, over on the Wellington Road in Edgbaston, which is another basically flashy suburb with a few decrepit streets. The house I'm in was once obviously quite a grand place, but has come down in the world rather, and is divided up into about 8 sets of furnished rooms. There's quite an interesting lot of people in the house. There's a Hungarian chauffeur who at present is engaged in getting himself a job in the States with a millionaire from Long Island. The millionaire apparently asked him over the telephone, was he smart, and said it was important that he should have a smart chauffeur. And Attila, this chauffeur, replied, "Oh yes sir, I'm the smartest man in Birmingham," meaning it as well. Apparently he's won the prize for 3 years on the run for being the best dressed man at the Locarno Ballroom in Birmingham. Then on the top floor there's a girl called Stella Pollard, who's a violinist from the Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, and next to her there's a waiter from the Albany, which is the new flashy hotel in Birmingham. Not nearly as good as it ought to be, considering the amount of money that was spent on it, but still the first modern hotel we've had in years. Next to me there's an old man who appears and disappears with alarming sort of irregularity, and downstairs there's the landlord in the room immediately underneath me, an old man with a beard who's had a stroke a long while ago and is completely bedridden and dominates the house from his bed, running it by shouting through the door at whoever passes through the hall, and monopolizing the telephone which sits on his bedside table. Opposite to him there is a young student who I knew vaguely at university, who's just arrived, and also an elderly teacher who I think is his a sort of personal friend of the landlord's. The room itself is a bit drab in its sort of decoration, in fact typical of the idea of a cheap bed sitting room. On the other hand, it is rather big and it's fairly well furnished, and it does have a beautiful bay window that looks out south and west, so that I get most of the morning sun and most of the evening sun as well. After having been in digs for most of my university career and relying on other people's hospitality when I went out to a large extent, I'm finding it rather nice to be able to invite people back for a meal or coffee in the evenings. In fact, we've had some quite pleasant little card parties playing cheat or hearts, which is another simple sort of game with high penalty points, which provides great amusement for everybody. Anyway, Betty, this seems to be most of the sort of news that I can think of that you could conceivably be interested in at the moment. Apart from that, I've got to go and have a bath and get ready to go to this dance now. Please give my love to everybody. I suppose Ricky must be now as old as I was when he came over to see us. I'm looking forward to coming to see you in the next 2 years. I don't exactly know when, because my plans are still very fluid, and it depends on what the English-speaking union can do for me in the way of a job, really. But anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing all of you, Ricky and Reggie in particular, because I remember them very well, and Mary and Navanwi, who probably won't remember me at all, and of course John and Bruce. Please give my regards to Rick. I'm always interested to hear what he's got to say on his tape every year, on the tape you send us each Christmas. He certainly compares the show very well. Anyway, very happy Christmas and a happy New Year to you all. John.
Hello, Betty. This is Wednesday, the 20th of November, and the time is getting on. In fact, the tape must go this week, otherwise it won't arrive in time. Well, there's a risk that it will not. There is nearly a whole side to fill, and only Daddy and I to do it. I don't know whether I'll be able to persuade Mrs. Davis to say something, and this year we haven't Pat Collier, Pat long as she is now, to say anything either. Well, something went wrong with the record just here, but there is going to be a story about some money, and it begins with the Mr. Pound note called Mr. McQuid, and I think you'll be able to follow it from there.
Yes, Mr. McQueen. And he married that 10 shilling note, and they went to live in a money box. And then suddenly they had 3 children with silver voices. First, a half-crown called Dinah, then a shilling called Bob, and last of all, a sixpence that was just a baby. And they all went on living in the money box on the mantelpiece. Well, far, far above them was the white ceiling, but they thought it was the sky. Every day Mr. Quid would look up at the ceiling and say, "What? No blue sky again? We shall have rain today." But of course the ceiling never rained. And far, far below the mantelpiece was the floor, covered with a bright green carpet. But the Moneybox family thought it was a field of young bright green corn. Every day Mr. McQuid would look down at the carpet through his telescope and say, "Dear me, is that corn still green? It ought to be ripening and turning yellow." But of course the carpet never turned yellow. It was nice living in the money box, but rather stuffy. So every morning Dinah and Bob went for a walk along the mantelpiece, and the sixpenny baby was put out to lie and kick in the sun. One morning she kicked so hard that she got herself up on end and rolled right off the mantelpiece and fell down, down, down till she landed on the bright green carpet. Then she rolled and rolled right off the carpet and fell down a mouse hole in the farthest corner of the room. Now, in that hole there lived a mouse with very sharp teeth and small round spectacles. She kept her money in a teapot. So, when the sixpenny baby came tumbling into the hole, she pounced on her at once and popped her in the teapot and shut down the lid like that and said,
"Never say no to a sixpence."
Well, later on back home on the mantelpiece, when the Moneybox family found that the sixpenny baby was gone, they all burst into tears. But at the end of 21 minutes, Mr. McQuid said, "No more tears. Dinah, you go east along the mantelpiece.
"Yes, Father."
Bob, you go west.
"Yes, Father."
And ask all the neighbours if they've seen our sixpenny baby."
"Yes, Father."
So Dinah walked east, and first as she came to the cuckoo clock, a tiny cuckoo popped out of a little door in the clock and said,
"Cuckoo, cuckoo, hello. Summer is coming in. Loudly sing cuckoo, cuckoo. Please could you tell me?" "Oh, there's another poem about me. Listen. In April come I will. In May I sing all day. In June I change my tune." "Yes, that's nice. But please can you tell me?" "Cuckoo. That's what I can tell you. Cuckoo. Goodbye."
and the little cuckoo went back into the clock and slammed his little door. and poor Dinah had to go on without finding out if he'd seen the sixpenny baby. Bob, as you know, was walking west to the other end of the mantelpiece, and soon he came to a big china dog. So he stopped and said,
Bloodhound, dear, have you seen our sixpenny baby?
Don't you mean have I smelt her? No, not a sniff. But I'll walk along with you and find her.
Oh, thank you. What a clever bloodhound you are.
Oh, I'm not clever, really. I don't think things out. I just smell them out. Let's go.
so they went further on along the mantelpiece. And now I'd better tell you what Dinah was doing at her end of the mantelpiece. When she got there, she found the little wise man from India. She knew him very well. He had 4 arms and a long coil of rope, and you'll soon hear what clever things he would do with that rope. When Dinah told him that the sixpenny baby was lost, he waved all his 4 arms about and threw his rope up into the air and sat on top of it, thinking. Dinah watched him for a little while, and then she said,
How long is that rope?
As long as I like to make it.
Would it reach down to the floor?
Of course it would.
and the little Indian wise man jumped down beside her and began to let the rope down over the edge of the mantelpiece until the end reached the bright green carpet on the floor below.
Do you want to climb down?
Oh, yes, please, yes.
And down the rope they went. First the little Indian wise man, and then Dinah. Down and down till they reached the floor. Then they walked across the green carpet. Well, now I must tell you what was happening to Bob and the China bloodhound. When they got to their end of the mantelpiece, they came to the toy tin aeroplane. The toy tin pilot was sitting in it. So Bob called out,
Good morning, Captain.
"Good morning. What can I do for you?"
Our sixpenny baby is lost. Will you take us to look for her?
"Jump in. Sit tight." Bob and the China bloodhound jumped quickly in the plane. The engine speeded up. Then the aeroplane ran along the mantelpiece and took off from the edge. "Sit tight. I'm going slower and landing into the wind." The toy tin pilot circled round, then landed his plane without a bump on the floor, and it ran across the green carpet and stopped. And there were Dinah and the Indian wise man watching to see who would get out of the aeroplane.
Oh, look! It's Bob and the bloodhound.
I don't like aeroplanes. I like traveling by rope.
Hello, Bob.
Hello, Dinah. The bloodhound's going to help us find our baby.
Thank you, bloodhound.
Your baby has been passed here.
Which way did she go?
I will follow her scent with my nose, and you must follow me.
So all except the toy tin pilot followed the bloodhound across the carpet till they came to the edge. And there, in front of them, lay a great stretch of shiny brown floor. Bob thought it was a road, but as soon as he stepped onto it, he slipped and fell down.
What a slippery road.
Don't be foolish. That is not a road. It is a glacier.
What's a glacier?
It is a pathway of ice. We have many in India, in the mountains. So we must do as mountain climbers do. This is where my rope comes in handy again.
Then the Indian wise man uncoiled his rope and tied one end to the China bloodhound's collar. He left a long slack piece, then looped the rope round Dinah's waist, left another slack bit, then put a loop round Bob's waist. Then he took hold of the other end and stood at the edge of the carpet and said,
Now, we are all tied together. If one falls down, the others will pull him onto his feet again. It is safe to cross the glacier now. Lead on, Bloodhound.
and the China bloodhound stepped out onto the ice, moving very slowly because it was so slippery and because he couldn't smell so well. Dinah followed him, then Bob, and last of all, the Indian wise man. Sniff, sniff, sniff went the bloodhound. And at last, he led them to the corner of the room, and there they found the mouse hole.
Your baby is down there.
Let me look. Down that deep black hole. Oh dear. Oh dear.
I must now undo the rope, for I see that we shall need it again. Now, who's going down? My rope is ready. I am too big, of course, and so is Bloodhound. You two had better toss for it.
All right.
So Bob and Dinah tossed themselves into the air, and Bob won. The Indian wise man let the rope down into the mouse hole and held it firmly with two of his hands, while Bob climbed down and disappeared. Almost at once they heard him shouting,
Oh, oh, there's a mouse down here and it's biting me.
You must go down and help him, Dinah.
Oh dear, I'm frightened of mice.
Nonsense. Down you go.
So while he held the rope very firmly, Dinah slid slowly down into the mouse hole. The mouse was delighted to see her and said,
Another one. This is my lucky day. I'm getting rich. First a sixpence, then a bob, and now half a crown. Oh, please, Mrs. Mouse, please give us back our sixpenny baby sister. I never give things back. A sixpence, a shilling, and half a crown. Oh, I can buy a lot of cheese with that. No good crying. I'm going to put you in my teapot, both of you. You belong to me now. No, we don't. We don't belong to anyone. Nonsense. Money must belong to someone. It's useful stuff. Useful to buy cheese with. Useful when you go to the fun fair. So into my teapot you go, you silly little shilling. No, no, put me down. Put me down. No, no, no. And now for you, my lady. If you touch me, I'll scream.
and as the mouse grabbed her, Dinah did scream very loudly, and the Indian wise man and the China bloodhound heard it.
Did you hear that, Bloodhound? Things are getting serious down there. I shall have to pull my rope up and think what to do next.
And he pulled up the rope with a jerk, threw it straight up into the air, and sat cross-legged on the top of it, blinking hard. Down in the hole, the mouse was very surprised.
Hey! There's that rope gone! Up in the air. It's what they call the Indian rope trick. Oh, Indian rope trick. That's something I've always wanted to see. Is there really someone sitting on the top of that rope? Yes, but he will make you pay to see him. How much? I don't know. Call up and ask him. Hey! You up there! How
4 shillings exactly.
I've got them right here, in a teapot. I'll bring them up at once.
And she picked Dinah and Bob and the sixpenny baby up in her teeth and popped up out of the hole with them. The China bloodhound was waiting, and he seized the mouse by the neck and shook her hand till she let the 3 children drop. The Indian wise man picked up the baby in his forearms, and they all ran and ran across the green coppice towards the toy tin airplane. When the toy pilot saw them coming, he started the engine and called out, "Jump in! Jump in! That's right, all of you! Hurry up, wise man, you two!"
Not me. I travel by boat. I'll get to the money box first.
And sure enough, when the plane landed and ran along the mantelpiece to the money box, the Indian wise man was waiting there, and had already told Mr. and Mrs. McQuid the happy news. They were weeping silver tears of joy, and after they'd hugged and kissed the children, they all had tea inside the money box. Milk for the sixpenny baby, jam sandwiches for Bob, jelly and ice cream for Dinah, a big steak of red meat for the bloodhound, toy tin shrimps for the toy tin pilot, and 1 grain of rice for the Indian wise man.
Well, that was the story for the small ones, David and John. Perhaps Mary and Milanwy might like it, but I think it's too babyish for them. I'm very much looking forward to being with you all next year, and particularly Mary and Milanwy. Often wonder how big they are now, and how grown up they're getting. If Mary is at all like Anthony, she's getting really quite grown up.
Well, here is Grandpa again. It's now the 25th of November, and I quite expected to put some more on the tape before we got to this date. Mummy tells me it's now getting urgent for the tape to be completed and for us to get it in the post. So this is my second contribution. It so happens that this occurred after the assassination of your president. I've just played back what I recorded to make sure that I was in sufficient strength. It seems to me that possibly I was talking a little too quietly, so I'm speaking a little nearer to the mic now, and possibly a little louder, and I hope it will come out clearer. Well, as I said, the assassination of your president last Friday seemed to be just incredible. Mummy and I were going to a party with an old colleague who retired earlier this year, and en route we picked up my secretary, Miss Ewan, who you, at least Betty, will remember. She came out of her flat. She said, "Oh, have you heard the terrible news? It's on the news that President Kennedy has been assassinated." We couldn't believe it. It seemed just impossible. Of course, when we got round to our friend's house, they'd all heard it as well. So when the news came on later on, we turned on the television, and there we had the Telstar showing of the actual assassination that was recorded at that time. You will now almost forgotten all about it, I expect, or to some extent it will be dimmer at any rate. But I can't tell you the effect it's had right across this country is that people had suffered a personal loss. And I think that it's given to very few men in such a short time to project an image such as Kennedy did in that less than 3 years, or about 3 years of office. He seemed to most of us, particularly those older, that he did represent the younger generation, your generation, who now must take over things after we seem to have made rather a mess of them. I remember after World War One, we thinking that our fathers hadn't made a very good job of world affairs up to that time, if it could result in the war such as we've just recovered from. As times pass, and you find the thing is still repeated, and it does seem to me the greatest lesson that history has to teach is that unfortunately the rising generation can never learn from its forebears. Each has to experience the same trials, stresses and troubles, and experience for itself things which its fathers have learnt in their same bitter way. I really feel that Kennedy had made an impression of sincerity on Russia, which is the really most important thing as far as Western civilization is concerned, and also maintaining contact with Russia while she herself is developing towards a freedom which she will not find it possible to stop. The Russians will naturally be very suspicious of this, and I was very sorry to learn that the young man that shot the president was a man of communist sympathies, because it has all the appearance of, as far as the Russians are concerned, of a carefully put up job. To me, it would have been much more satisfactory if this terrible thing had to happen, that it was someone that objected to President Kennedy's efforts to get a better status for the Negro in the United States. And had it been so, I think he would have secured more by his death than he was able to in that particular thing while he was living. We've just been listening to and looking at the film showing his funeral in Arlington, together with the pathetic figure of Mrs. Kennedy and his 2 children, with all the heads of states from all over the world attending. It made me realize how completely the United States has superseded the position that, say, Great Britain had at the time of Queen Victoria's death, when all the ruling powers, heads of states, assembled in Great Britain, although I was only a boy at the time, and remember it chiefly from what I learned afterwards. But they came here looking upon Britain as one of the dominant powers in the world, And it is one of the difficult things that the people in this country have to learn, that they are now no longer a dominant power. And they're finding it a very hard lesson to learn. In due course, I expect you will be superseded as all other nations have been in the past. And it is a time of considerable adjustment. We all hope here that the dangers that flow from the changes such as this in a government in such a position, such a powerful government in the United States, may have time to settle down before it is being tested. One can't help feeling that, as Lord Kedwin said on an interview here tonight with an American professor of history, an English professor of history, and a French diplomat, that Lord Kedwin said that he thought this had shaken the Russians to the extent of them being frightened. They're frightened of the unknown, as most people are, and he said that frightened people can do some very strange and erratic things. And therefore, it was a time for keeping very cool heads indeed, and an endeavor not to exaggerate actions or thoughts or expressions that could upset the delicate balance. The Frenchman thought that there was a possible chance of America going completely over to the extreme right, almost to a fascist sort of state. The American history professor did not think this was possible. He felt that Lyndon Johnson was committed as vice president to all the Democratic, all Mr. Kennedy's political moves and ambitions and beliefs, and that he was equally committed to the Democratic program as given out by the late president, and would therefore have to continue in that line. But of course it is obvious to us here that there will be other pressures brought to bear on him following this terrible assassination that may make things much more difficult for him to achieve. On the other hand, we understand that he is a man that is skilled in the workings of your Congress and Senate, and that as a political manager, he is skilled in getting through your government procedures, possibly much more than the late president was himself, and therefore may be able to achieve more with purely that point of view. We can only hope that it is so. The contrast between the two men is considerable. We look upon Kennedy, his wife, his people, his culture and education, who had ideals, and within the limits of politics, which someone described once as the art of the possible, he was endeavoring to give effect to those ideals. Lyndon Johnson, to us at the moment, appears more to what we usually regard as being the typical American politico who makes his progress in life through his political dealings and fixes and so on. Now, we could be completely wrong, but there is a complete contrast in the background and in the speech of the two men. To come from Texas at the moment, as far as England is and Great Britain is concerned, is not a very great recommendation. We learned with some alarm and difficulty of understanding some of the laws which can still apply in Texas, and that the city of Dallas has such a high rate of murders and shootings which seem incredible. So people here are also, one might say, wondering what the new president will have to bring forward, recognizing at the same time that he will have an election on his hands before very long, and that when one takes into account the fact that the United States, which is the bulwark of the West, will be tied up, as far as its leading statesman is concerned and the head of state, on a presidential election in a matter of 7 months or so, and that there's a new Prime Minister in Britain, also untried in that position, a new Prime Minister in Germany, a new Prime Minister in Italy, and an old and very shrewd Prime Minister in France, or President in France. All these factors taken together make one feel that the Russians, in their usual way, will not leave it too long before they start try and find if there is any weakness in this setup which can be used to their particular advantage. Well, all I will say in further on that point is that had you been in this country during these last few days, you would have been very proud of being an American, or would have had every right to be so. The world has lost a leader that was so full of promise, and that he probably will be remembered more, not only for what he achieved, but what he tried to achieve, and the sacrifice he made in trying to carry out his ambitions. To turn now to another subject, the sale of Plaswin. So far, there have been very few people that have shown any interest whatsoever in buying it, and that we seem to be as far off as ever. Our present proposals are, as you know, that we, or at least I think you do, that we continue to live here with the furniture in it until we've sold it. We think, and most people agree with us, that a house that's lived in, complete with its furnishings, makes a more attractive sellable proposition than an empty house. And I would say, particularly is that so at this time of the year. If we moved some of the furniture, for argument's sake, over to the bungalow, which we could do almost any time now, it would mean that we should have to start paying rates on that as well as on Plaswin, and that would seem to be a foolish thing to do. The other thing is, with the winter coming on, the bungalow can be kept above freezing point very easily and cheaply, the water turned off and drained away, and the place can come to no harm. Whereas if we move to the bungalow and had Plaswin empty and unoccupied, there's a considerable house, as you know, to try and keep warm, keep the water free, and all the rest of it. So, on balance, that's where we're hoping to do, to stay in Plaswin until we've sold it. This is having another effect too. We should now be planning, as I retire in June next, we should be planning our trip to the States. One feels unable to do that until one can be certain that one is being able to come, because I shan't want to leave here until we've got rid of this house, and it looks like being anybody's guess as to when that is likely to happen. This may be being unduly pessimistic, but it's the way my thoughts are running at the moment. It is possible, while I'm over your side, that I may have one or two calls to make of a professional nature on behalf of our electricity board. Our chairman is very interested in my visit and would like me to take the opportunity of contacting some of the people over your side that have got similar problems to our own, and from a comparison of notes to see how you tackle some of the problems that are concerning us. And I think Mummy's already told you in her letters that we had Mr. and Mrs. Young, who were old friends of Mrs. Young was an old friend of mine and Mummy's, who's now living in Vancouver. They stayed with us a night or two a few weeks ago. They were on their trip over here, and they're actually at this moment in Spain, but are returning to England sometime at the beginning of next month, and then from then on going back to Vancouver. And also our next door neighbour, or late next door neighbour in Ruislip, who is now living in Toronto, and he just lost a second husband. Mrs. Thatcher Betty, you may remember her. She is really not very well, and we said we'd also try and call on her in Toronto. It occurred to me that we might break our stay with Europe into sort of three sort of periods. One that we stay with you to start with, then we go west to Vancouver, come back to you through whatever route we may choose, and then go on to Toronto, and then come back to you again. This is all very tentative, and it may not pan out that way at all, but it seemed to me that the thing had attractions, probably from both yours as well as our point of view. One, I think we would naturally, and I think you would like it, that we should start our visit with you, and we should finish our visit with you, so that any joints off in the meantime would be somewhere in between those alpha and omega. This all means talking about visits. It's very difficult to avoid getting a bit excited about the prospect. Same time, one feels one should not build too much on dates when this can happen, as it seems so many things can happen so suddenly, and interfere with the best laid plans of mice and men. The weather here so far has not been at all wintry, except that it's been dull, it's been very wet, but we've had no severe cold weather yet. That is probably still to come, as it did last year. We're hoping, however, that the weather cannot be as severe, or the winter cannot be as severe as it was last year, and statistically I should think that is most unlikely, as last winter was the most prolonged winter since the year 1740, and so it would look as if the winter of 63-64 should be slightly better anyway, well, not quite as bad as 62-63. Well, Mummy's got some more that she wants to put on the tape, so I'll leave this now until she comes to, for her to go and contribute her, I don't know if it's her second or third portion, but I know she's been at least at it twice. Before she does, however, I can't remember whether, and I recorded previously, whether I wish to all a very happy Christmas in a Happy New Year. And if I didn't, let me do that now. I may get another opportunity before this tape goes to say it again, and if so, I think it's a thing that can be said, stand saying, more than once in any case. So, to all the Reynard family, all the Harrington family, Harrington Fay family, I mean, my very best wishes.
Hello, Betty and Rick, and all the children. This is the day after that on which Daddy has just spoken. There seems very little more to tell you. I have written and said what I felt about President Kennedy's passing, and Daddy has had a lot of comments to make about it, and it really is the thing most uppermost in our minds just at the moment. The next most important thing, of course, is getting rid of the house. Yesterday I thought we were going to have another opportunity of doing so, and I cancelled one of my civil defence classes in the afternoon at a few minutes' notice because somebody rang up and said they wanted to come and see the house. But after all, they didn't arrive. I don't know what put them off. Perhaps it was because it was a terrible wet afternoon, or it may have been they felt it was too far away from any town. I really don't know, but anyway, they didn't come and they didn't ring again. For news of what goes on here, there's very little happened recently which you will really appreciate. Mrs. Davis is expecting her second grandchild just before Christmas. Also, the Mr. Davis, who is not related to my Mrs. Davis at all, but is her next-door neighbour, that Mr. Davis, who is coming to be who comes to work in our garden, his daughter-in-law is also expecting her second child on Christmas Eve, I think. So it looks as if the Davis family are going to have Christmas babies this time. No doubt you've read that the stork has been busy in high places in England. 3 royal babies are imminent, some of them arriving at about the same time as your Septimus. Now, Tinker's just pushed his way in here and is sniffing at the tape machine, but he never makes any sound, so I won't be able to record him. We come and go such a lot these days and leave him by himself. He suspects me every time I disappear and follows to see where I am and what I'm doing. I don't know what he'll do when we go away. I do hope that this is going to come out all right on your tape and that it will sound better than last year's did. I suppose I should say that it will come out better on your machine, our tape, and I hope that the tape that you make will be better on our machine. I'm hoping that you will only have run 2 tracks instead of 4. I don't very often see Mrs. Hughes, with whom Ricky and Reggie went blackberrying on that memorable afternoon, and who took such nice pictures of them. She still teaches in the village school, and her 2 boys are really getting quite grown up. I think the younger one will take his GCE this year, and the elder one has a house of his own and is in the wholesale poultry business in quite a big way. His parents set him up with the latest of everything. Has a large cold store, plucking machines, and all the things to help prepare poultry for the retail market. And I believe he's doing very well. He was no good at school, but he seems to be a very good businessman. I think I told you last year that Mrs. Hughes, who used to teach the boys, and her family have left Glencarriog and gone to live in Shrewsbury. Her husband's job was moved, and the only daughter they had finished at college, and she has a teaching job in Shrewsbury, so that it was wise of them to move their house. I don't think there's any more about people that you know. In the last month, well, it's just a little more than a month now, but during 3 weeks, we lost in our Derby and Joan Club 4 members, which seemed to be a terrific number of members to die in so short a time. And the funny thing was, none of them had appeared to be very much out of sorts a month beforehand. Gives one cause for thought, wondering we never know when we shall be called. Where the old Queen Hotel at Dollywern, near the bridge over the river, used to be, there is now a Cheshire Home. There are a large number of these homes. I was stopped just there by somebody calling at the door. These Cheshire Homes were founded by Group Captain Cheshire, V.C., whose wife is known as Sue Ryder. She's now Mrs. Sue Ryder Cheshire. She has done a lot of work in Europe, particularly Eastern Europe, since the war, in establishing homes for refugees. And they, between them, made a home. Their first home in England, I understand, was the home that was left to her by her parents, which has been turned into a place for displaced persons to make a home. Many of them, of course, are incurable cripples, and the Cheshire Homes, as known in England, are usually for people who have been spastics or cripples all their lives, although some, of course, have been crippled in later life with arthritis and other diseases. The Cheshire Home was opened about 18 months ago, the one in Dollywern, and it has now about 20 inmates. But a new wing has been built and will be occupied just before Christmas, and they will then be able to take 32 people. They have a matron and an assistant matron, but it is stressed that it's not a hospital or a nursing home, but a home. And some of the people pay their way, and some are supported by the county health authority. Of course, a great many people, or quite a number of people from the village, work there as orderlies and help in the kitchen. The most of the people have to be helped to be dressed, to be bathed, put to bed, and many of them spend their lives in wheelchairs. This summer they were given by voluntary subscriptions, a bus, which is in effect an ambulance, and it has a hydraulic lift on the back, and their chairs are wheeled onto that and then are raised up to the level of the floor of the bus, and they can be pushed into the bus, and some of them are able to transfer to ordinary bus seats, and I think 4 or 5 can remain in their wheelchairs in the middle. I think altogether it carries about 16 passengers, I think. It's labelled as an ambulance, and one retired gentleman in the neighbourhood takes them out very frequently in the afternoon. Some go one day and some another. And they are hoping that some of the men will be able to get to see a football match occasionally, and that any of them who wish to can go to the local Eisteddfods or concerts. And so it does make life much happier for them. During the summer this year, I have been down sometimes by myself and sometimes with a WVS helper to help with tea in the afternoon. We take the tea round to them. Some of them can't even hold a cup, and talk to them, and afterwards do the washing up. And this relieves the afternoon duty helper, and possibly she can do something else, perhaps some cleaning or polishing somewhere or other in the home. Daddy has helped them a little. He's also on the management committee, but on one of my first visits I decided that the trolley that they had for serving the tea was very unsafe, and the wheels were not very suitable either. So I asked Daddy if he'd like to put a new set of spring loaded wheels like we have on our trolley, and he said yes he would, and went down and had a look at it, brought it back in the boot of the car, and strengthened it with little iron brace brackets, and put the new wheels on, and really it is a joy to push now. It will go up and down the unevennesses in the floor without any trouble at all, because some of the floor levels are not the same, and they've had to build ramps so that those who shuffle can manage them, those who can't lift their feet up a shallow step even. Recently they've had another trolley given to them, and that also had very small hard wheels, one of which kept falling out. So Daddy purchased another set of spring loaded wheels and just put those on, so now they have 2 good trolleys. Last week WVS met at our house, and I had been told by one of the helpers that they had 4 double bolsters and some 3/4 length bolsters, which they would like turned into pillows. And so we took the rounded ends out of the bolsters and made them square, and we cut them off to a reasonable length, and we divided the long ones into 2, and finished by having 15 nice pillows, which Daddy then transported back to the home in the car. They will be used in the new wing, which I think will take 16 patients. I think they have 4 rooms for 4 beds, and they have some very nice new roomy bathrooms and toilets, which will accommodate the wide wheelchairs that some of them have. We like the matron very much, and we find quite a lot of pleasure in going down there and talking to some of the people. Some of them are very difficult to understand. Their speech is affected, and really it's rather pitiful to see them. I think the youngest is 27, and the majority of them are between 50 and 60. At the party to which we went last Friday night, I met for the first time one of the wives of Daddy's new colleagues, and one for the second time. They had both moved to Wrexham into new houses, one on the previous Tuesday and one the Tuesday before that, so they were both in the throes of getting straight. One family have 3 children. There's a daughter of 21, a son of 16 and a son of 14. The other pair have no children. Well, at this point I was called outside again, this time to go and look at the porch which the builder is putting over the back door in the bungalow. And for a wonder, it's a nice clear night with stars and the moon coming up, the first we've seen for quite some time. Now, Ricky, I wonder how you're doing and what you're doing. I suppose this year you will probably be going out of junior high school into high school, unless you've already done it in September. Not very well informed about your school system. And I wonder what you're expecting to do before you're 20. What your aim is. Perhaps you're like John and don't know or didn't know until pretty late. Wonder whether you're going to take arts or science eventually. I suppose that sometime very soon you'll have to decide. And you'll also have to make up your mind whether you're aiming for university or technical college, or whether you're going to go into commerce. After we've been to see you, it should be much easier to know what you're like and what you're doing. It is very hard to imagine you as taller than mother and father, and that you're becoming almost a young adult. It's a very good thing Mother keeps us well supplied with photographs. Otherwise we shouldn't have the ghost of an idea of what you were like. And she also tells us quite a lot about your enthusiasms and your hobbies. But even so, we don't know very much about you. I'm afraid that we were not able to glean very much from last year's tape, as it was very, very blurred indeed. And so, although you had quite a lot to say, we didn't hear it. Anyway, we wish you lots of luck. Work hard and play hard. And just remember that you can't have your time over again. I expect you'll feel old. That's grandma talking, somebody who's old. But I always remember in Grandpa's home there used to be a sampler hanging on Grandma's, your great-grandma's bedroom wall. It had been worked by her, I think, when she was a little girl, in fancy needlework. And it said, "Lost somewhere between sunrise and sunset, 60 diamond seconds." I can't remember the rhyme all through, but it did say, in effect, that these 60, not diamond seconds, 60 golden minutes, studded with 60 diamond seconds in each minute. They're gone forever. And that is very, very true. All the time you waste, when you grow old, you wish you had again. And although it's very nice to be idle sometimes and to waste time, at the same time, if you can, when you're doing something, do it with all your heart and soul, well, then you know you don't waste any time. You're always learning something. And these years are the most important in your life because, well, without the groundwork, you can't build anything else on top of it. And Reggie, I understand that you have spent quite a lot of time with Grandma this summer, so I expect you've been having the opportunity to play the piano quite a lot. I wonder how you're getting on with this. I do hope you're learning to play quite nicely. It's an asset to be able to play, and will give you many happy hours when you're a grown-up. That is, if you have time to do it. Other things don't take up your time. It was a very nice picture that Mother sent us this year of you in your summer slacks in the garden, being sprayed by a hosepipe on a very hot day. I can see that you have also grown quite tall and quite a young man, instead of a little boy any longer. I expect that you are both taller than I am now. I hope that you are working hard at school too and trying to do well. And Mummy and Daddy will be proud of you. Quite a lot of the things that I said to Ricky, apply to you as well, of course. Hello, Mary. I thought how very nice you and Miffy looked in the pictures taken down at the farm at Easter time, when Mummy had made you both new dresses, one blue and one primrose colour, I believe. I expect yours was the blue one, as you are the blue-eyed girl in the family. I wonder if your hair is still as fair as it used to be, and as fine. I expect so. You know, when Mummy and Auntie Mary and John were little, I often used to wish that one of them had had blue eyes. But I never had a blue-eyed baby. I believe your mummy has two, because I think she said that David has blue eyes as well as you. Mummy tells me that you'll be getting a very useful girl, and I expect by next summer, when the new baby comes, you'll be turned 10, and perhaps she'll allow you to bath the new baby. I remember Mary was 11 when John was born, and she was delighted to be able to bath the baby when he was about 6 weeks old. And a great many of her friends came in, and half a dozen or more of them used to come in turn and practice on a real live dolly. From the photographs, there doesn't seem to be very much difference between you and Miffy in size. She's very nearly as tall as you. I was delighted to have the very nice letters that you sent this summer, and think that you both write very nicely. I wish you'd do it more often.
Sometimes you must ask Mummy what news there is to tell me and sit down and you do it instead of Mummy, because she's a very busy person and doesn't manage to write to me very often. And you could do it for her. Well, I hope you're doing well at school too. Won't it be nice next year, after your summer holidays, when you start school again, if we're able to come and meet you from school and even perhaps come in and see your school some day? It would be very nice if we were able to come one day to a concert or something or other of that kind. Are you and Miffy both in the same school, or do you go to different ones? I'm not very clear about that, although I know Mummy has told me. I expect Miffy is one or perhaps she may be 2 classes behind you. Well, I hope you'll have a very happy Christmas and that you'll have lots of fun and be a very useful girl to Mummy. Hello, Miffy. You're the brown-eyed one, and now I expect it sounds funny to be called Miffy, because I understand that at school you are Isabel. Well, that's a very pretty name, isn't it? I think I like Isabel very much. My grandma, my father's mother, your great-grandma, was Isabel also. Isabel Grey, her name was. I suppose in some ways I'm rather like her. I'm rather bigger than she was. She was a tiny woman, but she had white curly hair rather like mine, or mine is like hers, and we both had the same kind of grey-blue eyes. You, of course, are like Mummy, of brown eyes. I wonder if your hair is still fair. Of course, it's not the flaxen colour that Mary's was, and still is, I believe. I expect you will end up by having brown hair like Mummy. I'm just longing to see you all and see what you're like. That will be an exciting day, won't it, if and when it comes? See, next Thursday's Thanksgiving Day. And then between then and Christmas I expect you'll have quite a lot of excitement, lots of parties, and perhaps a school concert or carol singing parties. And there'll be your Christmas shopping to do. All very exciting. I wonder if either you or Mary have learned to knit yet. Nobody's ever told me, or whether you can sew, whether you've ever started to do any embroidery. Very nice things to be able to do, and of course now is the time to learn. So glad to hear that you and Mary have fun with Mummy's doll's house. And I'm very sorry that we were not able to buy for you a modern cooker or refrigerator which would fit into your doll's house kitchen. But something else has come instead, and I'm still going to be looking for them. One of these days I shall find just what I want, and then maybe it will come along as a birthday present for you. I realise, of course, how old-fashioned some of the other things must have looked. So now it's time to wish you a happy Christmas and lots of fun. And I'll now say something for young John. Hello, John. I hear you go to school now. That must be exciting. I wonder how many other children are in school with you and how you spend your days. I expect you have learned some new singing games and probably learning to sing some Christmas carols and to say little rhymes, play lots of games. I expect that your little brother, young David, is not able to walk yet, although he may be standing and trying to do so. I expect he's always after your toys, and that if you have anything you treasure very much, you have to keep it out of his way. But it won't be long before he's able to play with his own toys, and perhaps won't want to get into your toy box. You must have lots of fun with him, though, and I expect you'll be able to teach him to talk and sing some of the songs that you have learned at school by next Christmas. I hope you both, you and David, John and David, have a very happy Christmas and lots of fun and some nice times all together. And now to Rick. I gather that you are often away from home again quite a lot. I had hoped that we should hear from you before the tape was dispatched, but so far we haven't since your birthday. But no doubt we shall have a letter one of these days. As you sometimes go quite a long way away, it must mean that Betty has extra responsibility, though I expect the boys are old enough now to leave, able to look after her and help her. We enjoyed having the pictures of the house. It looks a very pleasing house indeed, and you have quite a good piece of garden between you and the road. And I don't know, but I should imagine that the sidewalk sets you quite well back from the traffic way too. It's very nice to have such well-grown and mature trees around the house too, because I'm sure in your hot summers it must give very welcome shade. I see you have a motor mower, though by the photograph that was taken in the garden at the back of the house in August when Reggie was being sprayed, it didn't look as if you had much grass left to cut. I expect it gets scorched by the hottest part of the summer, which relieves you of one job anyway. I wonder whether you will be spending Christmas at the farm or at home. I expect that unless your mother has come to stay with you, it's quite likely that you'll be going down there for Christmas, although it is quite a journey nowadays, particularly if you should have snow, and particularly with the large-sized family you now are. It's like travelling with 4 adults and 4 other children, isn't it? I suppose it must be somewhere just over 200 miles to go to the farm, which in bad weather can be quite far enough, according to our standards anyway. I was interested to hear from Betty that the boys had English bicycles. I didn't know that we exported bicycles to America. I wonder what make they are. although I believe she said that they were Phillips bicycles. I believe they're very good. In my young days, there were such bicycles as Rallies and Swifts, and I think the Phillips bike is one of more recent prominence. Our visit to you still seems to be in the dim distance, but as the weeks romp by and the months come down in number, I sometimes think that the time when Daddy retires is growing very, very close.
Well, here's Grandpa again. The tape hasn't been completed. Another day is gone, and it's now 20 minutes to 12, 20 minutes to midnight, and I suppose really I should be thinking about going to bed. But I really ought to have recorded early this evening that there's been an extraordinarily good program on television, and I'm afraid we've been looking at that. We probably ought to have been recording more on this tape too. The day has been a relatively mild one, with a lot of rain, but some bright patches of sunshine. And tonight it's a clear sky with a brilliant half moon, starlit, and the moon is making shadows of the window frames on the hall and landing floors, which you probably remember when you were here.
I don't write so often as I might, and neither do you. I think we both have quite a lot to do, but it doesn't mean that we don't think. You're often in my mind, and I must confess I still miss you, although I should have got over that by now and realised that our visits will be few. Our meetings will be few, but we hope that this next year's long meeting will make up for the few times that we meet. I'm fortunate in being able to see Mary fairly often, and I must admit that Mary's a fairly good correspondent, and she often talks to me on the telephone. Of the three of you, I see most of her and know her best. John, I'm afraid, still doesn't write very often, although when he breezes in home, you'd think he'd only gone out yesterday, and almost picks up the thread of the last conversation. But I do wish that he wrote and let me know what he was doing, but he's so full of the present all the time that he doesn't have time to think outside his own occupations. And I expect really that is the same with you, because you have so very much more to do. And I quite realise that with 8 in family you have all you can do to keep everything as it should be. The outside of the bungalow has at last been tidied up, and the next time we have a sunny day I hope to take some pictures so that you can see what it looks like. With the hedge on the one side and the tall trees and a good shrubbery on the other side, once we get the lawn and the flower border settled, it really will look quite well established. I'm sure you'll like it when you see it. Of course you must have a very fair idea of what it's like from the plan. The joiner is in there at the present time putting the finishing touches to the woodwork. We just now have to have a couple more jobs done by the plumber, and then we can light the fire and try the central heating out, and we then will be able to keep it warm, although we're not living in it. And there are also the curtain fixtures to go up, and the floors to be sanded, stained and polished, but it won't take very long once the sanding is done. I do hope that you're keeping reasonably fit during this time, and that you will make use of the children and see that you get ample rest each day, that you get your feet up as often as you can, because I expect that now, after having had several children, you find that you get varicose veins or swollen ankles or something of the sort. Well, my love dear, I very often think of you, and I'm so looking forward to next year. I'd like to say to Rick's mother a very happy Christmas and lots of fun with the young folk, and I hope that she'll be able to see us next year. I hope she feels better than she did, and that we should be able to come to the farm and see her, as well as her being in Richmond to see us. I'm looking forward to going to Lovettsville and seeing the places that you knew so well, or know so well. I'd like to see the house that Betty and Rick lived in, and the school that the children went to, and also the shops that they used to visit, and their church too.
What a funny thing it is that when one sits down to deliberately decide that one wants to record a message to someone, everything seems to escape one. I carry a small tape recorder in my car. The object of that is to record thoughts as they come to me as I go along. Sometimes it's the man I want to see, what I want to say to him, or that I want to remind him that he's supposed to provide me with some information which I haven't had yet. Or it might be that something I observe of our plant along the road, or some of our vehicles, or some of our men, which I want to know something more about, and I can just put that on the tape in the car, and each morning I give it to my secretary, and she types out what has been said. If she can, she actions some of the things that I've recorded, and some of the things that may be for me to personally do. She puts it in front of me and I can pick it up from there. It's probably cheating on a memory. One finds, I think, as one gets older, the memory gets poorer, but I've always made a practice of carrying a notebook or something with me over a long number of years. There's an old friend of ours whose mother must be nearer 90 now than 80, who is right slap up to date with all the news of the world, and everything that's happening in the country and overseas and all the rest of it. And someone congratulating her on her ability to keep in touch with things that were happening, she said, "Well, my dear, I've got such a shocking memory that I can't remember anything that happened last week, so I've got to keep absolutely up to date, having to talk about it all." I think that was a very wonderful sort of outlook, and a very practical one too, and one I think that we cultivate as one gets older. Well now, I can see the tape is coming towards the end. I think Mummy will want to record something more before she puts it in the post, but there has one thought occurred to me. I did speak early on of the suggestion of having what we call a dormobile, which is a car or a vehicle with 2 bunks in it, cooking facilities, drawers and so on. I wonder if you, Rick, could send me over in the advertising matter of the sort of vehicle that is available in the States, which complies with that sort of specification. It's, you might say, a motor caravan. Well, now I think this will be my last little bit. So I will again wish you, all of you, a very happy Christmas and a happy New Year. And that goes for all the family in its widest possible numbers and whoever may be with you. May the weather be kind to you and the customs good. God bless you all.
Well, here we are with just less than a month to go, well, just a month to go to Christmas Day, a month today. I do hope that I haven't left it too late for this to reach you by ordinary post. Daddy has left just a small amount of tape, so it comes to just filling in the last little bit. What he has just said, I think too, and it is that we wish you all a very, very happy Christmas and look forward to sharing next Christmas 1964 with you, if that turns out to be possible. Much as one desires it, we also have the feeling that you never can tell, and we shall have to wait and see what Providence has in store for us. Today is a clear, or rather cloudless sky, but hazy. We had a little frost last night, one of the first this season, and there's no wind. Quite a change after the terrible gales which we've had the last few days. I believe in Holyhead Harbour has been crowded with boats, and Torbay has been full of boats, where folk have been unable to set out to sea because of the very heavy weather. When you write next time, tell us just when you have the best of the autumn weather in Virginia. I mean the colourful fall, and whether it comes earlier or later than it does further north. Well, now I don't know how long this tape is going to last. It's getting very, very thin. But again, all the very, very best to all of you. Have a happy time, lots of fun, and we are looking forward to hearing all of you talking to all of us. Don't quite know who all of us will be this Christmas, whether we shall be together on Christmas Day. I rather doubt it, but anyway, we shall be joining Herbert and Mary in one of the subsequent days, if not on Christmas Day. And it appears that John will be with us anyway. He says he's coming home on Christmas Eve. Bye.